UFC Vegas 85 is coming out in 2 weeks, and that kind of broke my heart because I didn't know we were having a week off for UFC. But regardless, we are going to get an early full card breakdown and prediction video up for you guys. Timestamps will be there if you'd like to skip to any particular fight. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Kyle. I am your guy with too many YouTube channels, and welcome back to another full card breakdown and prediction video, guys, where we talk about every single fight on the card. Let's get right into it. Starting off with the first fight, we have Themba Gorimbo taking on Pete Rodriguez. Now, it is important to note that Pete Rodriguez did take this fight on short notice. I don't recall, my apologies, how exactly late short notice that is, but it's a little bit shocking because Pete Rodriguez has had fights canceled because he can't make weight, and now he is making weight on short notice. Hey, I'm not so sure this fight's gonna happen, to be honest with you. But I'll start with Pete Rodriguez. To be honest with you, there's not a ton of UFC experience coming into the UFC. It looked like, okay, you know what, this guy could be something special. He had power, but at the end of the day, he was never really all that technical. He's kind of like a glorified brawler. Came into the UFC, unfortunately had to fight Jack Della Maddalena. We all know how that went. And then he bounced back with a win over Mike Jackson. But then again, that's Mike Jackson. How much weight do you want that to hold? It really shouldn't hold any. But he's taking on Themba Gorimbo, who finally got a nice UFC win. It's really cool to see because I really do believe this guy has some potential. Because while, you know what, it's tough to say because while he's only had 2 high-level fights here, I mean, like, by high level, I mean, like, UFC, but he's not fighting any bums over here. He came to the UFC, ended up getting a loss, and then bounced back with a very, very nice win. So, from what we've seen so far, it seems like Themba Gorimbo is ever improving. I like that we're starting to see more of an all-rounded game from him. So, I really do like Themba Gorimbo in this matchup. Mostly, though, because he's taken on Pete Rodriguez, and I don't think Pete Rodriguez is good, but at the end of the day, when you have somebody as powerful as Pete Rodriguez, you always have to worry, but Themba Gorimbo should absolutely 100% be the better fighter here. I'm going to take Themba Gorimbo to get the win. Moving on to the next fight, we have Charles Johnson versus Azat Maksum. Now, I'm actually super excited for this fight because I love watching Charles Johnson fight, and I'm quite excited to see Azat Maksum back because, you know what, I'll start off with Azat Maksum because everybody, myself included, was really hyping this guy coming up to the UFC because he seemed like he was going to be something special. He has a complete game with chin, cardio. You know, he can fight anywhere. It's not like he's like the best fighter ever, of course, but I mean, like, he's definitely talented. And he coming into the UFC, 16-0. He now got a first split decision win against Tyson Nam. I thought he won this fight personally, but it was a little bit worrying because he made this fight closer than it really should have been than him coming into the UFC. But then again, he still proved that, in my opinion, at least he belongs in the UFC. The only thing, though, is I don't know to what level he's at the flyweight division. I'm unsure about the Charles Johnson type level because we know how Charles Johnson is. He can take on anybody. He belongs in the UFC, but he's not necessarily a top contender. Charles Johnson, in my opinion, he's better than his record shows. I really do believe that, but he just can't pull it together. He's coming off of a 3-fight skid, and you could just tell. You could just tell, especially in the Rafael Estevam fight. Like, I can't help but root for this guy, man, because he was getting controlled by the wrestling, and he has a problem going backwards. A huge problem. He showed the will to win, scrambles, submission defense. It's there, but he just can't put it together, right? The thing is, though, something important to note is this dude's will to win is definitely there because in the 3rd round, he really listened to his coach saying, you need to go at him, you need to knock this out, and if this fight would have continued going on, and I don't know how much you guys really like me to say that, but if this fight continued going on, he would have found a finish. I mean, so he's a good fighter, Charles Johnson. He just can't put it together. And Azat Maksum, perhaps a little bit more overrated than we thought. So here's the thing, because Azat did get hit a lot in his last fight. And I think it's very important to look at this performance in particular because this is his first UFC performance. He got hit a lot. Charles Johnson, if he hits you, that's not really a good thing. This is a very tough fight to pick. I'm going to lean towards Azat Maksum to win this fight just because Charles Johnson hasn't been able to put together in 3 fights against wrestlers. And if Azat Maksum comes in and tries to grapple, scramble, wrestle with him, he should be able to get the win because the game plan is there for Charles Johnson. I'm going to pick Azat Maksum to win this fight. Moving on to the next fight, we have Molly McCann taking on Diana Belbita. And to be honest with you guys, I don't know what to think about this right now. Honestly, I might throw a bet on Diana Belbita just because last time I looked, at least, it doesn't have it on Tapology here, but last time I looked, Molly McCann was a really good favorite. And I think Molly McCann's so overrated. It was crazy because in her last 2 performances, she's looked horrible. She's looked horrible. Erin Blanchfield beat the brakes off of her. And then Julia Stoliarenko, she came in overly aggressive and got armbarred. I don't think she's good. I really, really don't. She's overconfident, and she comes in and she doesn't have the skill level. She's walking through people like she's Erin Blanchfield, but she doesn't have the technique behind it. It's crazy to me. But she's taking on Diana Belbita, who she's so inconsistent, man. The potential is there. I kind of see it, to be honest with you, but the way she strikes, her eyes are like glued to the floor, and she throws her fists like a child. I don't mean to be insulting, I really, really don't, but her performance speaks of herself. Look at her wins compared to her losses. Like, every single time she fights somebody of a little bit of significance, she loses. 15-8 speaks for itself. Like, this is just one of those fights in the flyweight division that could go either way. Molly McCann going to come in, try to do what Molly McCann does. Is she going to get finished doing that, or is Diana Belbita going to actually land some shots? I don't know. I have no idea who's going to win this fight. If you made me pick, if you had a gun to my head, I would say Diana Belbita, because at least she doesn't get steamrolled like we've seen Molly McCann get steamrolled, but Molly McCann does have wins. So, I don't know. It's tough to say. Like, Diana Belbita, win-loss. Maybe she's due for a win. Who knows? I have no idea what to think about this fight, guys. I'm sorry. Moving on to the next fight, guys. I am super, super excited for this fight. We have Marquel Mederos taking on Landon Quinones. Now, this is a very, very fun fight because I'm excited to see Marquel Mederos coming into the UFC because he proved that he is kind of a little bit, he has a potential to be a hype train in his last fight. He showed that his offensive striking is phenomenal. It is very, very good. The problem is, while he does have good offense, this dude has a little bit of a problem with his defense. In this fight, I'm not talking about the Ikazov fight because he looked really good in this fight, but his chin is way too out there and he does not move enough. That's a big problem, but in saying that though, his offensive striking is there. The tools are there. He's really good at what he does. I just think that any high-level fighter will chew this guy up. I really do think that. Like, I mean, a high-level striker at the very least, because he's shown that he has some good takedown defense as well. But he's taking on Landon Quinones, who came into the UFC with a lot of hype. He has a very nice all-round skill set. Like, he seems like he's a pretty decently complete fighter, in my opinion. But he came into the UFC and unfortunately lost to Nasrat Haqparast. But I think Nasrat's a very underrated fighter, guys. He got thrown, the lone wolf got thrown into the wolf with Nasrat Haqparast. So I'm not taking too much away from this loss because he did have moments in this fight too. Other than that, he's looked pretty good before coming to the UFC. So this is why I'm really interested in watching this fight, because it's two guys new to the UFC that I really do think have potential. In saying that though, I will be having a slight lean towards Marquel Mederos just because I haven't seen the danger from Landon Quinones that I believe that Mederos needs to present a problem to him. I like Mederos and the danger that I've seen from him, the dangerous offensive striking, I mean. One day, soon, he's going to run into a problem, but I don't believe it's going to be right now. I'm going to ever so slightly lean to Marquel Mederos to win this fight. Moving on to the next fight, we have the return of Blake Bilder taking on Jeong Lee. Now, this is an interesting fight, to be honest with you, because both guys kind of have like a little bit of a loose striking style. Both guys can... They have good placements of their shots. Both guys have a grappling background. They can explore that opportunity. So both guys are fairly complete, but there's a big but. Blake Bilder. Oh man, he is coming off of such a pitiful performance. Pitiful. He looked good. Everybody was overhyping him. I thought the hype was like understood. I thought the hype was there. I thought that he was actually going to steamroll Kyle Nelson. I bet on him. He looked awful. He gassed and was overconfident. And guys, he had a huge problem with kicks. And I say this so many times on the channel. I hate it when fighters do this. And I saw it with Blake Bilder. Instead of adjusting, okay, when you're in a fight and you're having a little bit of a problem, like the leg kicks, instead of adjusting, instead of trying to win, Blake Bilder was getting hit by Kyle Nelson and doing the, oh, that doesn't hurt me. You know, like, it's so aggravating to watch because we're all like, we know it's hurting you, Blake Bilder. We know that you don't have a problem with this. Stop pretending to be hurt. Stop pretending to showboat so that way when you lose the decision, you're going to, oh, I was clowning around. Actually, actively go to your corner, change something that you're doing. This always shows me that these guys rarely improve. And that was shown in Blake Builder's last fight. I'm completely turned off from him because of that. Is he going to stay at this level forever? If he can't adjust a little bit into a fight, if he can't adjust in a corner, and if he refuses to, like, kind of accept the fact that he needs to change something to get the win here, how is he going to get better? You know, I'm so put off from him because I was so hyped on this guy. And I promise you, like, with all my heart, I'm not being salty because of about my bet. I always bet with money that I'm willing to lose, right? But, like, I was so high on this guy. I will never be confident in him again after that last performance. I know this whole breakdown's about Blake Builder, but I think it matters. When a guy shows that to me, it matters. When you have a fighter, or two fighters here, that seem to have a similar level of skill sets, I think Blake Builder would have a little bit of advantage on the ground, but even in the striking department, both of them kind of, I see similarities, even in the striking style, like I said. So, in a fight that's relatively tough to pick, I'm going to pick Yeong Lee. I'm just so put off by that last performance by Blake Builder that I'm sure there will be a point where I'll pick him again, but I will never be confident in him again. He's not going to improve. At least what we've seen from Lee, he can continue the win streak. I'm going to pick Yeong Lee to win this fight. Moving on to the next fight, guys. This will probably be a really quick breakdown because we have Julia Stoliarenko taking on Luana Carolina. I'm not hyped on either of these fighters, to be honest with you. It's kind of like, in my opinion, low-level flyweights. You have Luana Carolina coming off of a win where she did absolutely nothing. Nothing happened in the fight. I mean, it's just ended up getting a win. Everybody's like, oh my God, she destroyed the prospect. You know, like, I'm not high on her, man. And then before that, she's had 2 losses to both Molly McCann and Joanne Wood, which didn't look good here. And then she had 2 wins, one of them being a split decision against, like, again, the most important thing to take a look at here is low-level competition. Nothing good to take a look at here. But Julia Stoliarenko, her 11-7 record speaks for itself. She loses and she wins. I'm shocked when she does win, though, because I don't think she's good, man. I feel bad saying this because, like, at least she's taking on a little bit better competition. Like, she lost to Chelsea Chandler. It's crazy to me. Like, Alexis Davis, she sucks too. They all suck. She got a win over Molly McCann. At least she can carry that momentum. At least she has a dangerous submission threat that we can take a look at. And you know what? That's why I'm going to pick her. I'm going to pick Julia Stoliarenko in a very low confidence pick because at least, well, Luana Carolina does have submissions, but Julia Stoliarenko at least offers a decent amount of danger with her submissions. But then again, that's all she has. So I don't know. I'm not looking forward to this fight, guys. Moving on to the next fight, we have an interesting one because it's Thomas Peterson versus Jamal Pogues. Now, for this fight, I don't really know what to think, guys, because you have Thomas Peterson, who is 8-1, and just coming off of the Contender Series against Chandler Cole. It's tough because he ended up getting a dominant win here. But at the end of the day, his opponent was just fat and unathletic. He got a takedown, used some nice ground and pound, and just found his way into a submission. Like, it was an impressive performance, but I think his opponent sucked. Other than that, if you're taking a look at Thomas Peterson, what he's going to want to do is he's just going to want to drag it down and kind of do what he did in his Contender Series fight. But he's taking on Jamal Pogues, who is like, it's one of those heavyweight fighters. Like, he's a little bit better than the bottom of the barrel heavyweights, but he is absolutely nothing special. He didn't get destroyed in his last fight. Before that, he got 3 wins, but then he ended up just getting a loss against McParkin, where nothing too crazy happened. McParkin just did a little bit more to win. It's an interesting fight because at least, like, with Thomas Peterson, we see something a little bit different, but he hasn't taken on a guy like Jamal Pogues. I think Pogues is a little bit better than everybody's thinking that he is. I'm going to really wait to judge Peterson to see if he gets past Pogues. But other than that, at least I've seen something different. At least I've seen some heavy groundwork from Thomas Peterson. I'm going to pick him to win this fight, to be honest with you, but it's a very low confidence pick. Jamal Pogues could definitely just stuff the takedowns and expose Thomas Peterson on the feet. I'm going to pick Peterson to get this win, though. Sorry, guys, really quick pause on the video. If you are interested in seeing my official bets and plays every single week, I post them the Thursday or Friday before each event for the community tab for any channel members. Very cheap compared to any other YouTube channel you want to touch. I'm trying to be a little bit unique here, but it is cheap. It is cheap, and I talk about, like, if there's any risky bets that I'm placing, maybe any underdog opportunity bets that I'm placing. I have the complete betting guide coming out, and if you want to see where I'm actually putting my money where my mouth is, check out the channel membership. If you're interested in my past events, the betting guides now include the bets from the last card that I placed, so if you're interested in seeing how well I'm doing, They will be out for you this week, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this. Let's get into the main card. Moving on to the next fight, we will finally get to see Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikov. Now, I did break this fight down a little while ago, and I was decently confident in Randy Brown getting the win. And honestly, guys, nothing's really changed here. Randy Brown, we know what we're getting with Randy Brown. He's very good striker, very lengthy for the division with some grappling behind it. He's coming off of a very nice win against Wellington Turman, but Muslim Salikov, on the other hand, his age is finally starting to show. He's 39 years old now, a little bit inconsistent in his recent performances. He hasn't looked horrible, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, there's nothing too special about Muslim Salikov at this point in his career. The way I kind of look at him is like, oh, not a bad welterweight, you know? Like he's a good fighter, but when he takes on a guy like Randy Brown, when he fights a guy with an 8-inch reach advantage, a guy that's 33 years old, a little bit on a roll, coming off of a little bit of a rough loss, I don't see Muslim Salikov winning this fight. I imagine that I'll be placing a bet on this fight. I'd have to see the odds. But yeah, Randy Brown should get the win here. I would imagine he's just going to keep Muslim Salikov on the outside, use that length, because Randy Brown uses that length very, very well. And Muslim Salikov the aging is evident now. He's winging his shots. Like, he always tried to really throw pretty hard. But at the end of the day, like, you know what I mean. It's a 39 years old, almost 40-year-old fighter coming in there in the welterweight division. That's very, very tough in itself, and he's taking on a guy who's great in Randy Brown. I'm picking Randy Brown to win this fight. Moving on to the next fight, another very interesting fight in Gilbert Urbina taking on Charles Radke. Now, the reason that I say this is interesting is because both guys will probably come in with a grappling game plan, with the side of Gilbert Urbina having definitely more striking than Charles Radke, because Charles Radke, that's kind of like all that he does. He'll shoot a takedown and try to submit you, which, like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I mean, you got to have the feet work a little bit too, especially if you want to get a high in the welterweight division. But he's taking on, so I'll start with Gilbert Urbina. Okay, very, very inconsistent as of recent. I watched him in the LFA. I love watching the LFA. I'm a big fan over there. He ended up fighting, you know, like, he does have some really good wins in there. Or, sorry, not wins. I didn't mean to say that. He does have some very good experience taking on very good fighters. Like I said, I just highlighted, he took on Sean Brady, and then he also took on Brian Battle. But then again, how much do you really want to take that into consideration? Because that is so long ago, you know? 5 years ago he fought Sean Brady. But even then, he's still proved that he has some good experience for his only 9 fights in a professional organization. So Charles Radke is taking on, he has put together 5 really, really nice performances. You know the game plan. You know exactly what you get with him. He's going to come in. He's going to dive for your legs. He's going to try to submit you. So the question is, and the reason why I think it's very tough to pick, is because I don't know who's going to win these grappling exchanges. Gilbert Urbina is good on the ground, but he has been taken down. And on the other side of the coin, Charles Radke has very great offensive wrestling, but we've seen him gas out in the past. So I don't know. I don't know which one of those things are going to happen. Is Charles Radke going to be able to get a submission because Urbina is open for the takedowns, or is Gilbert Urbina going to take advantage of the potential gas tank issues that Charles Radke has? That I don't know. If you had a gun to my head, I would pick Gilbert Urbina, although I think this is a little bit of a 50-50 fight. I'd pick him because of the experience that he's shown, the higher level that he's fought so far, the other experience in organizations like LFA. He's definitely taken on better opponents, I can tell you that. So I'm going to pick Gilbert Urbina for that reason, but I really don't know with this one. Moving on to the next fight, we have Aliash Kebab Krizev versus Makhmud Muradov. This one's a very interesting fight, and I honestly cannot wait to see this fight because I think it's a fantastic matchup. So I'm excited to see the Black Wolf again because I know people really dog on this style line, but I find it beautiful the way that fighters like him are able to take people down and control them to the extent that they do. I find it beautiful, honestly. I think it's fantastic to watch. He's 14-0, looked absolutely perfect so far. Come off the Contender Series, he got a very nice win against Dennis Taliluan. He comes in, tries to take you down, tries to submit you, tries to beat you up. That's exactly how the style is. You know the style, right? But he's taking on Makhmud Muradov. This is where I am unsure. As of recent, he's looked very, very inconsistent, but my opinion kind of changed on him in this Brian Barberena matchup because it's really tough to say how I feel about him as a fighter because he's good. He's shown really good technique. He was dominant, but at the end of the day, he was still having a tough time against Brian. Brian is one of the worst fighters ever. Like, I don't get, like, how this guy's still in the UFC. Like, he was landing huge shots, more shots, and he was just open to getting hit all the time. I don't understand why. He got takedowns and still struggle with those takedowns against Bryan Barberena. Like, he dominated the fight, but I'm just not impressed at all. You should be beating guys like Barberena. I was left with my opinion kind of changed on him after this fight. Kind of like Blake Builder, but not that bad. I think Kryzriev is going to win this fight. I think he's going to take him down. I think he's going to be able to have control. Like, we've seen in this Bryan Barberena fight, we've seen it before. Makhmudmuradov does lose control. And yeah, you know what? He might have better striking. But I don't know, man. I was left with a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth after that fight. But then again, like, is it really fair to judge him off of one fight? That's why I'm interested to see this fight, because I'm interested to see the performance that Muradov puts on. If he has problems with Kryzriev, then I'm like, okay, maybe I was right, but he could win this fight. He probably has better striking. He does have takedowns on his own, but I would imagine Kryzriev has better takedowns, better control on the ground. I'm going to pick Kryzriev to win this fight. I'm decently confident in saying that. Moving on to the next fight, we have Viviane Araújo taking on Natalia Silva. I'll start with Viviane Araújo because she's like a little bit of a more complete fighter than most of the fighters you'll see in the flyweight division. Of course, she's very, very inconsistent, right? But at least, like, you look at her, and I don't think she's garbage like a lot of people in this division. She's taking on pretty good competition. She just got a nice win over Jennifer Maia. I'm not too high on her, to be honest, but somebody I am high on. Oh my God, it's Natalia Silva. You want to talk about talent for this division? You talk about Natalia Silva. She has had a perfect run in the UFC so far. We've seen her just constantly have great performances. She's just destroys people on the feet. The only thing that worries me a little bit is sometimes in fights, not usually, but sometimes we see her and it takes her a minute to really get going. Then I sit here, I'm like, oh my God, is she going to get fraud checked? But then she gets her footing. She gets, like, into the groove of things, and then she ends up dominating her opponent. Like, I love the way this girl constantly moves. I love the way that she's patient. Sometimes the finish will be open, but she still sits there and remains technical. This girl is a fantastic, fantastic fighter in the flyweight division. I'm absolutely picking Natalia Silva to beat Viviane Araújo in this fight. Moving on to the next fight, guys. This fight's going to tear at my heartstrings a little bit because I want both guys to win. We have Money Moicano taking on Drew Dober. Now, Renato Moicano. This one is really tough because he's coming in off of an injury over a year off. Okay, other than that, he has a decently complete skill set. He is a very good fighter, but what really, really makes me worry is him coming back. We don't know how well the training's been going. He's 34 years old, almost 35 years old now. That really, really makes me worry. Assuming everything's perfect, he comes in, he has a pretty good complete game. I believe that he can hang with the top 15 of the lightweight division. I don't think he is championship material or anything like that, but he is a very, very good fighter. As of his recent fights in the last 5 years, or the last 5 performances, he's had some success, some losses. You can see, like, he does have some okay wins and some okay losses. Like, he's a good fighter. He's a pretty good fighter, but he's taking on Drew Dober, who I am so happy that he bounced back to the win. We know what we get with Drew Dober. Very, very chaotic style, but there's calculated chaos within the chaos. There's technique in there. Like, he has nice power. It's really good. So what I do want to talk about, because we finally saw him get that chin cracked against Matt Frevola, and it was a long time coming. He got a really nice win over Ricky Glenn. So I want to talk about this because it really was a great performance. He spoke earlier before this fight about not getting into his not buying into his own hype. This time, he was very patient. He set things up instead of just swinging. Like, we still saw a little bit of swinging, but he honestly looked great. He looked accurate, patient, powerful. He destroyed Ricky Glenn. I was really, really worried about his chin in this fight, but I still do have that worry because he didn't really get hit in this fight. So I have a little bit of a worry with both guys here. I worry about Moicano's time off, and I worry about Drew Dober's chin. Is his chin okay? Because it wasn't really tested in this fight. That's why it's a really tough fight to pick for me. Other than that, I'm going to lean towards Drew Dober for my pick here because he's been so active. He has been very, very good he's been, like, really destroying some guys. Like, he fights fairly often. All of these fights were within a year ago, right? He looked really, really good in most of these performances. And I could see Moicano coming in, trying to get his footing, and Drew Dober just coming in with that calculated chaos. You know, Moicano might not be ready for it. I'm going to pick Drew Dober in like a 70-30 type situation. You know, I'm picking Drew Dober to win this fight. Moving on into the main event, guys, we have Roman Dolidze taking on Nasruddin Imavov. This one is very interesting. It is a very, very high-level fight. Very high-level fight, and I think this fight could really go either way. We have Roman Dolidze, who shocked everybody coming into the UFC, right? Because nobody really thought he would really be anything special, but in hindsight, that's kind of stupid to think because this guy is a very, very good contender at middleweight. He's coming in the UFC so far. He looked fantastic in all of his performances except this Marvin Vettori fight. Now, everybody thought that Roman Dolidze won this fight, or at least at the time there were a lot of people who thought Roman Dolidze won this fight. I actually thought Marvin Vettori won the fight. Maybe I need to watch that again, but regardless, this dude is a great fighter. He has some nice power with grappling behind it. But Nasruddin Imavov also looks fantastic. He looked great, everything that we've seen in the UFC so far, but then he ran into Sean Strickland, and Sean Strickland ended up, of course, winning that fight. But wasn't that fight on short notice? I could be wrong about that. Maybe there was short notice on Sean Strickland's side. Excuse me. Sorry about that. But this aged incredibly well, right? Nobody else also knew how good Sean Strickland was, but then he's coming off of a no contest against Chris Curtis, where there was an accidental clash of heads. But in this fight, his striking looked very crisp and his defense was on point. He was well on his way to beating Chris Curtis. And it's important to note that he was the first guy to ever take Chris Curtis down, and he did it multiple times. This leads me to think who's going to be the better striker. I would imagine it would have a slight lean towards Imavov, but if the fight goes to the ground, Dolidze is so dangerous and Imavov is so technical. I don't know who's going to win the ground game. There are a lot of really great fights on this card, guys. I'm unsure about the ground game, but I would give the striking edge to Nasruddin Imavov, and that's why I'm going to pick him. But even then, saying that, I'm not confident, man. I'm not confident. It's a fantastic main event. It's a fantastic fight. Give me Nasruddin Imavov as my official pick, although I'm not confident in it. I cannot wait for this card, guys. But while we wait for this card to happen, if you're interested in hearing what I thought about the results of UFC 297, check out this video right here, guys. Thank you so much for coming. Take care.